Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Together, we'll explore and enjoy content and conversations around mastering transitions in our relations, our wellness, our careers, our families, and especially in our missions and visions. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. One of my dearest friends and greatest inspirations is here with me today. Her name is Laura McKowen. She's the author of We Are the Luckiest. Isn't it like already a bestseller?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yes.
For those who are wondering, bestseller means 10,000 copies have been sold.
Mm-hmm. Double that, much more than that. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yes,
it debuted right at the top it was Publishers Weekly bestseller list. Didn't hit New York Times, but
baby, we don't need that New York Times bestseller list when you've got it in the hands of tens of thousands of human beings who desperately need it. That's bestseller enough for me.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's wonderful.
You've had a long and successful career in PR, and you kind of were raised in the drinking culture of advertising. And when you got sober, you became recognized as a voice in recovery. Your writing has moved me from day one. You're so fucking smart.
Thank
and
you.
Your intelligence is matched, I'm just going to say this, by your soul.
Oh.
Like there's soulfulness to your intelligence, and that for me is pretty much everything. You have an award-winning blog. You've hosted the iTunes Top 100 Home podcast and another one called Spiritualish. You've been featured in WebMD, New York Post, Bravo, Today Show. I say all of this because I want my listener to know we're talking to the real deal. And this is probably an important conversation for you if you are still wondering if maybe alcohol or some other substance that you're using to numb things or behavior that you're using to numb things might possibly be a problem.
Yeah. I just remembered that you and I, the first conversation we had was when you came on home.
That's right.
Yeah.
The very first.
That's so funny.
The very first. So my first question, has your mom read the book?
Oh, that's so funny because you told me before we started talking I have a funny first question. And
it's so funny to me. I had to ask it though.
Yeah. Oh, yes. My mom read the book.
And how is she feeling about her talking about Susan's friend Cynthia, who is, I mean, the discomfort in all of this. It's the early part of the book. I'm around page 84, 85.
Yeah.
The discomfort is real, dude.
Yeah. She had a really hard time, to be honest, reading it the first time. She was really upset.
Yeah.
She was the one I was most nervous about because of my family members, aside from my brother, who, there's no stickiness there. He's amazing. Well, my mom's amazing too, but he's my brother. There wasn't any discomfort or awkwardness, but with my mom, there was a lot of difficulty. And I told her before I had her read, what I wanted to do was fly to her, sit down and watch her read it, control the whole thing. I was really nervous for her to read it. So I told her everything that I talked about, every scene that I brought up, every conversation, all of it. And she was like, okay, okay, that's fine. But when she read it, she really had a hard time.
Well, because that's when in that generation, if I may, it's hard for them to have other people see things that aren't savory.
That's right. Very much so. And she's extra that way,
They're all extra that way.
Well,
that was that time. They cared a lot.
Right.
Appearances mattered.
They did. They did. And, she came from my grandmother, who appearances extraordinarily mattered, So my mom kind of made her strides in progress. And then I just jumped completely off the cliff from day one. I wasn't that way. But anyway, she read it the first time. We had a difficult conversation because, as everyone does, we think it's about us. We internalize it, right? And as a mother, I knew it was going to be hard for her to read about me being in so much pain, because she knew, but she didn't know, right? No one really knew. And that was hard.
No, any good alcoholic doesn't let anybody really know.
Yeah, no, nobody really knew. So, but the great thing is, then she read it. She said, I read the first time, basically holding my breath, and then she said she's read it a second time, and that time she was able to actually have some distance from it and could really appreciate it. So it's helped our relationship in a major way. It was tough for a while. We had to have some difficult conversations, and now it has opened us up much more.
In the end, she's living with a kid who's a best-selling author who did a brave thing. So
Yeah,
she's
and I
looking
mean,
good.
don't get me wrong. She's so proud of me and for all of that, but she what it comes down to, she just feels responsible in a lot of ways.
Oh, that's so poignant. I
Mm.
got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which you as a mom could totally understand. You read something
Yeah,
20 years, 30 years later, and you go, I could have done this. I could have done that. I wasn't there like this. I mean,
right.
it's just a natural thing for a mom to do.
Oh, bless her heart.
Yeah.
Can you tell me and my listener the story about that last hurrah, if you will, just so my listener can hear kind of what
Yeah.
you know, look for this.
Look for this.
Look for this.
So, do you want the hotel room story or the year later story when I finally got sober?
I would like the year later story. The hotel room story is definitely deep and good.
Yeah, yeah. But I think this
But
one is,
it's the year later.
if this
Yeah.
is the year later when, so for people that are wondering, the event that got me started on sobriety was this horrible night with my daughter where I left her unattended. She was 4 years old. But it took me a year, more than a year, of starts and stops and really trying to get sober and really understanding what the hell was going on, and wading through some serious anger and grief and all of that before I finally did get sober. And the last hurrah, it was the weekend my mom, we were planning a surprise 60th birthday party for my mom. She used to live in the same state as me. And so we had all kinds of family fly in, friends fly in. It was a big party, and my brother and his wife flew in the Friday before the party, and I picked them up at the airport. We came back to my house and picked them up from school, and I was like, all right, why don't you guys, Joe, my brother said he wanted to go show Jenny around, his wife, and so I had them go with Alma. I had Alma go with them.
Mhm.
And the important part of this, or I think the interesting part, and anyone who is addicted in any way can relate to this. It's like you start watching yourself do things. Like, I knew there was nothing left for drink for me anymore in drinking. Nothing. My
Mhm.
brother was not down with me drinking. No one was drinking with me anymore, right? So I was only doing it in private. Like, it wasn't like drinking would have been okay. Like, we were going to have some beers that night, at the get together. It was like none of this was okay, and I didn't plan it. But as soon as they took Alma away, I went to the liquor store. I was like watching myself go into the liquor store, getting some disgusting little nips of vodka and a bottle of wine. And I'm going to walk around my town drinking.
Wow.
And I returned to the house a few hours later. I was visibly intoxicated, as if my brother wouldn't know. And we went to surprise my mom. This wasn't the night of the party, it was the night before. Went to surprise my mom, and her face just fell because she was so excited to see my brother. It was surprised. She didn't know they were coming. And then she saw me. I was visibly drunk, and her face just fell because this had been a year of, she was with me through the struggles. She had picked me up in the hospital and all these things. So that was the last night. It was the most ridiculous, sort of strange, nonsensical thing. And I woke up that next morning. That was the day of the party. I had to take my girl to soccer. I had to, be a hero. I had to pick people up from the airport. And I had such soul crushing anxiety. I mean, truly, like, when I think of drinking, which is rare, but when I do think of it, it's like all I have to do is take 1 second to think of that anxiety, and boom, it's over. It's gone. There's no desire, right? And that was the last night I drank. I struggled through that night, through the party. I was very hungover, very anxious, very upset, just so devastated with myself and that I was still in this place. And I ended up having a conversation with my brother that night in front of the party. I had taken a little leave towards the end of the party to go in my car and cry just because I was exhausted. And he came looking for me.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation out in front of the party, and he was just like, "Look, Laura, like, this is your thing, this is your thing." And it was the first time I didn't try to get sympathy or I didn't add anything to the conversation. I just agreed. I said, yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
There's a tenderness there.
Totally. And a real surrender. It's such a cliche, but it really was. It was like I had run out of excuses, and it was just in that moment, I guess, it was something like taking responsibility, really taking it for the first time. Like, this is never going to get easier for me. It's just done.
Yeah.
And that was my last hurrah.
Page 190 of the book, what this all boils down to, I think, is a message of belonging to a love bigger than anything you could possibly fathom on your own.
Yes.
An impossible, intractable, love that word, impossible, intractable love, an indestructible one that exists inside of you right now, always.
Yeah.
I've learned, and I keep learning, to be a kinder witness to myself first. Some moments are harder than others because some aspects of myself are far more difficult to face than others, like weakness, like neediness, like jealousy. But I practice, and I am reminded, and I continue to try. Over the years, being alone with myself, especially in meditation, has become something I crave and appreciate rather than something I fear and avoid. Not always, but more often.
You make me cry whenever you read my words. I don't know what it is.
Your words are balm for me, healing for me. They go right into my cells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is that belonging. I mean, I think some other part of the book, I said something like, I was talking about loneliness, because such a big part of when you realize this thing, whatever your thing is no longer going to work, there's a pushing off. And between that pushing off and where you arrive, there's a liminal space. There's a emptiness of sorts, right? And an aloneness. And so I talk a lot about loneliness in the book. And I said, I think it's not loneliness that we fear, but not having a home within ourselves. And I had always looked for belonging elsewhere, in anything, anyone, and certainly in drinking. It took away the pain of not feeling it.
Right.
And that's definitely what sobriety has given me more than anything, is that home in me. I'm not afraid of myself anymore.
Right. In page 215, each little step I took to make something mine, every time I owned some small aspect of my world, took care, tended to it, I felt an almost shocking sense of pride. These are the small things you're talking about.
Mm,
Play dates, replacing a light bulb, the things that we would just sort of gloss over as addicts
mm.
become these enormous accomplishments.
Oh,
So much of this part was quiet, internal, and went largely unnoticed day after day. Nobody was sending congratulations cards for changing the light bulb. These weren't things anyone would post on Instagram or gush to friends about. It wasn't the stuff of a big splashy life as I had long envisioned it, but rather a slow, steady march. This is for the listener who's wondering if this is for you. A slow, steady march towards something so much more substantial. I was finally growing up.
that's it.
That's the whole, for me, that's like kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's why the book ends with a chapter called The Nice Little Life, because that's having a nice little life is all of that growing up. It's simple, but it's not easy, right?
Mm,
It's simple, but it's not easy. There's a lot of work that goes into that nice little life so that you can have ease. And it is the tiny things. I'm so proud of myself when I get my inspection done on time. And today I ordered birthday treats for my daughter's birthday. Like, I just wasn't doing any of that stuff. I thought that Carolyn Knapp said it so perfectly. I read it like 10 years ago in her memoir, Drinking a Love Story, which is still my favorite addiction memoir. And she said, I thought that growing up would be a byproduct of time passing. And it's not, like you grow up because as time goes on, but it's not. It's a slow ownership of your experience
mm.
of life. Yeah.
I just want to leave a little space around that. My God. It's there's a whole work around when one gets sober. There's a whole work around what exactly it all means now that that's out of the picture.
Mm,
If my listener is listening and thinking, well, I'm not going to be as cool or as fun or as hip or as interesting
right.
sober. I know I had that thought. Did you ever have that
Of
thought?
course. Of course. My two thoughts were, what if I'm boring and who will love me?
Right.
Yeah.
What if I'm boring and who will love me? It's interesting because if you're sitting in either one of those two thoughts for any extended period of time, you will get anxiety.
Of course. Of course, because we have the painful thought, but the story we put on top of it, primarily that it's going to last forever, is the anxiety.
Right. And if you keep allowing the thought to persist as an event in your mind, that anxiety becomes a chemical presence
Oh
in your
yes.
brain.
You know what? I had the most amazing coach back when I was first sober. I think she was actually really good friends with Gabby, and and they got sober
What's her
together.
name?
Gina.
Gina.
She lives in Florida now, but they
Okay.
got sober together, like in the same building. There was a group of them, and she was the first one to tell me this, and I never forgot it, and it helped me tremendously. Is that anxiety? Because I had so much anxiety always, but especially in early sobriety. Because she said anxiety, because I kept trying to figure, what am I so anxious about? She's like, well, anxiety is not a feeling; it's the result of trying not to feel
Mm.
something.
Whoa.
I know.
Let me just hang on to that for a second. It's not a feeling, it's a result of trying not to feel.
Yes. Like, that changed everything for me. I'm not kidding. I have to write about that. I forget about it. And then every now and then it comes up. It really changed everything for me. And because then I just had to ask myself, okay, what are you trying not to feel, girl? Which isn't an easy question, but it gets you somewhere. Whereas anxiety, it's just endless and nameless, and it,
Mhm.
it
Formless even.
yeah, it doesn't have anywhere to go. But what am I trying not to feel?
Right.
You can go somewhere with that.
Well, it also points to all the behaviors that one does not to feel. And instead of blaming yourself for, you know, misbehaving, or as you say on page 221, at this part that I really love, you were on a date and you said, rather than giving him premature access to my energy
Mm.
or my body, I was suddenly, you were acting differently now that you were sober. That really, I just want to like put a whole lasso around that. Don't give people premature access to your energy.
That's basically going to be my entire next book.
And scene.
And scene. Yeah. Yeah. It gives it somewhere to go that, but this is a learned thing. Like, what I want people to know, because you said, if you're having this thought that you're going to be boring, life is going to be colorless. And for a period of time, it does feel like that. And it's supposed to feel like that, right? This is supposed to change you completely. And I don't mean that you are in pain for protracted periods of time, but you're feeling everything.
Mm.
Whereas you haven't probably, maybe your whole life. I mean,
Mhm.
I know I found ways to escape myself from the very beginning for very intelligent reasons, right? To survive my environment. We learn to do things. And so I had essentially gone through 25, 30 years of not really feeling a feeling all the way through. We don't get taught how to do that. And then it gets to a point where we think, if I let that grief in, if I let that anger rip through me, it will kill me, right? So we do everything we can to keep it at bay, but we never can, of course. We never get away with that. And so those periods of early sobriety are full of everything, and the pain, but alongside the pain comes the joy too. Alongside the grief, especially. I don't know if you've experienced this, like, with the loss of your mom, like grief and joy are like these sisters,
Oh my gosh, yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so,
It just opens you up to a new level of capacity for feeling in general. So the joy
mm,
is more easily felt as much as the grief was or is.
yeah, it's like layers are removed from, it's like that direct experience of life. There's no more gauze in between or filters, and that's hard. But
Yeah.
man, that's what I was chasing all along. That's what I wanted the whole time.
Was that clear seeing?
That direct experience of life. I wanted that.
Hmm. You have a little sort of, I don't know, I guess you would say like it's you talking to the camera at a certain point. You're no longer telling the story, but on page 222,
Mhm.
I kind of always look at that page in every book just to see what
Of course you
happens
do. Yeah.
there. Um, I wanted to lay all these phases out for you. You're speaking to your reader right now.
Mm,
Because, first of all, it takes time. But also, I know if you are facing giving up anything, you cannot imagine living without. And especially if you are facing sobriety, you cannot imagine that a life exists on the other side that you'd actually want to live.
mm,
And even if you are years into sobriety, you might be asking yourself if this is all there is.
yeah.
Sometimes people new to sobriety tell me they feel so completely overwhelmed by the mess they have to clean up or the work they need to do. They don't even know where to begin or how to prioritize. I tell them they don't have to plot it out. Life will present itself. One thing you can count on is that there will never be any shortage of opportunities for growth. I
we know
love that.
we know that's true.
I love that part. You don't need to go out searching for ways to become enlightened. Just go sit in traffic, spend a few days with your family, and you'll find more than a treasure's worth of material. And this is
Yeah.
the gold here. You only need to do the next thing in front of you.
Yep.
Be willing and open to receiving the assignments that come organically through the people and the tasks of a daily life. Extend the horizon of your timeline for improvement out about 10 years longer than where
Oh,
you've set it now.
I wish. Oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that up.
I wanted to know this.
Right. Me too.
Gosh, the things that I rushed.
Oh, everything. And everything. It's like, and one of my therapists, we were working on some relationship that I was really having trouble with, and boundaries were new to me, right? And we all are terrible at figuring out boundaries and setting them. For like the first time I tried and failed miserably, she was like, "Oh, honey." She's like, you need to extend it. This is like a 10-year thing, not like a 10-day thing." And maybe could have sounded devastating, but it was like, thank God. Thank
Yeah,
God.
thank God I have a little more time.
I'm not supposed to get this, and it's the
Mhm.
process that's the gold anyway.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the process that's the gold. Like, we never get there wherever that is. We never get there.
yeah. For the person who is not quite where you were. I mean, in the next paragraph, you say this and know this: each step contains joy. If you
Mm.
decide to notice it, even in the most difficult stretches of these years, pardon, I have been humbled just to be here at all. In this
Ugh,
way, sobriety has forever changed my baseline. Everything difficult is only relative to the living hell I once inhabited.
yes.
So nothing really is that difficult. But I want to speak to, because I know this to be true, but I want to speak to the listener who's listening right now, who's thinking, all right, I'm a little bit fucked. I'm not like in the curb. I'm in the gutter off of the curb with my head, on the pavement. However, I do know that I drink too much. I do know that I want it too much. I definitely think about it more than I should. I plan for it, or whatever your
Mhm.
substance or behavior is, if it's sex, if it's work, if it's pot, whatever.
Yep.
What do you say to those folks who will never have a real messy bottom,
Right.
but who know that they need to stop?
Oh God, so many things. So it's almost worse that way. It is almost worse because this is the thing, person. You have no idea what's possible for you. No idea.
That's
On
great.
the other side of that thing, no idea. Like, I say this all the time, if you could see even a fraction of what's possible for you, you would fall to your knees and cry. You really would. And that 20% of life force that this thing is taking out of you, maybe it's not taking 50% even, or 80%, but it's taking that 20%. That is where your magic is. That's your extraordinary. It's not that you could be more productive or more, I don't know, better shape. It's like, oh, it's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that. It's like, that's your connection to God, as I see it. That's your connection to your true self, if you think of it that way.
Mhm.
And that 20% is like infinite. And that's what you're not getting with this behavior, or with this thing. That's what you're not getting.
Yeah. That's very good. That's a really nice awareness for somebody to just hold in the back of your mind for a little while.
I'll tell this story because he wouldn't mind at all. But I have a dear, dear friend
Mm.
who has not had any kind of bad bottom. He's had a couple bad nights here and there. But he's been talking to me about his drinking for 4 years, 5 years, just at certain times that it's grating on him, or that he wonders about it. But he would never qualify as an alcoholic. He would never
Right.
would. He would never, he might answer one yes to that quiz. And the rest is like, no. And his life is good. He's got a great career. He's got a great partner. But we did this great exercise with me and him and another guy friend of mine at the end of last year where we gave each other a blessing and a challenge for like the next season of our lives, next year or so, whatever.
You're going to need to outline that little situation at the end
I
of this.
know you would love that.
It's very
So,
good.
um, we sat with each other and we thought about it. We're very deliberate. We took a lot of time and really thought because we know each other's lives very well, inner lives, outer lives, and my friend and I, the friend I'm talking about, his name is Jim. The other guy and I both came to Jim without having talked to each other, and the challenge that we both came up with for him was, you got to let drinking go, and he did it. He did it, and he's on like day 50,
Dude.
and I just had breakfast with him this morning, with both of them actually, and he was in tears. He's like, "You guys, I can't I just can't believe this." Like, it hasn't been super hard for him. He's had a couple hard moments, He's a
Right.
musician, and so like after gigs or whatever. But it hasn't been hard for me like him like it was hard for me. But he's like, "I cannot like just thank you for challenging me with that because I can't even believe how different everything is. Like I can't even believe it, you know?" So that's a tale for that person who might be like Jim.
Well, I think what ends up becoming different is all of the ways in which, as I was just saying, you plan for your next outing, your next drink,
Yeah.
drug, whatever. You're always kind of scheming,
Thinking about drinking, thinking about not
rewarding
drinking.
yourself, not to reward yourself.
Drinking also, or smoking pot or whatever, it also makes you feel like you're doing something.
Right.
When in fact, it's like there's a void there. It actually subtracts. It's not just a neutral, benign time.
Mm,
It's like it subtracts your life out.
yeah.
And so you have to first recover that in energy the next day. You're always just kind of leveling out. You never get to pass a certain threshold of thinking, of intuiting, of any of it. It's just, uh, yeah, that was so. Since you brought that up, that conversation this morning for me was just so. I was afraid to tell him that, because my experience was I didn't stop until I was in so much pain. There's literally nothing left. And so I have a hard time believing that someone could do otherwise, but I see it all the
Right.
time. Most of the women that I work with aren't in severe trouble.
Mhm.
In fact, they worry because most of the people in their lives would never their worry is, but no one thinks I have a problem. How do I explain that? And then what do I do with the judgment of like, why are you doing this? And I
Right.
think that's really shifting. I really, really do.
Culture in general is shifting toward more acceptance of people in sobriety settings, recovery settings.
Well, and seeing that not drinking is like a huge asset.
Dude, and it's also a real relief for your liver
Oh, well, yes, then there's that.
and
It's
all of your
your
organs.
body, your brain. I mean, I could go off forever about how absurd it is to put that poison in your body, but
Boundaries. Let's do this. Page 106.
mhm.
You outline what you call the pregnancy principle. One, listener, this is for you. You're building a new life. Two, the life you're building comes first, period. Three, anything or anyone that doesn't support the new life goes. Or nothing trumps the process, meaning nothing gets in the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that the pregnancy principle, well, it came to me because a friend, when she was like 5 months sober or something, was really worried because she was gonna have friends over, and she hadn't told them that she wasn't drinking, and she was nervous about like doing the gymnastics. Do I have alcohol? Do I not have alcohol? How do I say to them? Do I offer them something? Do I not offer? Do I explain why
The
there's no alcohol?
gymnastics.
Yeah, all that, which we do, right? Because,
We
but
do.
this is a thing, and this is what occurred to me when she told me about that. I immediately thought of like, what's just a clear cut example of when we're not confused or feel like we need to explain boundaries, and it's when we're pregnant. And this isn't just for people who have been pregnant. Like, you also respect a pregnant person around you. If you're a man, if you're a woman, whatever, no one argues with the pregnant woman about not drinking or not eating certain foods, or if she needs to go to sleep, or if she needs to not go out. And how is it any different when you are literally saving your life? Because even if you're not in a detrimental state of your addiction or your behavior, it is still the difference between you quitting this thing, you shifting into this new place where this is not part of your life anymore, is really the difference between just simply existing and actually living. So you are saving your life. It is that big. It's back to the question you just asked me. Like, you don't even know what's out there on the other side of this thing. And so for me, that just, it's so clear. Like, this is the attention that you have to give it. This is the no bullshit that you have to apply to this. It's that it's that big of a deal, and it should be treated with that much respect as you would treat a growing life. It just cuts through all the crap.
It's funny. I wish I would have read that part about anything or anyone that doesn't actually support this process goes.
Mm,
Wish I would have read that. I spent a little too much time
I know.
uh, on things that I shouldn't have.
I think we all do, and I think that's the part of the process, because we naturally want to keep. I wanted to just get sober in the background and not disrupt any of my life and not make things harder for other people or awkward or all that. And I just suffered more because of that. And you have to kind of experience the suffering. And I mean, I drank. It's a lot of what kept me drinking. And
Yeah.
so you realize, yeah. And if that keeps someone, it's such a relief. Like that first no, that first no, I'm not going to go to that, instead of the wavering and the mental gymnastics. The first, I'm just going to tell these people that I'm not drinking anymore. My
Yeah. Thank you very
God,
much.
your
Such a
whole
relief.
body just says thank you. Your whole soul says thank you.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right. Which leads me to my next question, which is how do you talk about it to Alma?
Oh, such a good question, and it's the one I get asked every time I'm on book tour stop so far. And she's 11, so she's
Right.
still, I have like a tiny window before this is a real thing in her life. She's still a
Mhm.
kid, but this is what I tell people. The best parenting advice I've ever received was from my first boss, and when I became a parent, she called me and she's like, "I'm just going to tell you one thing. You're going to get all kinds of advice." But she has 3 kids. She's like, "Only answer the question asked." And I was
That's
like,
really good advice.
"It's the best advice. Only answer the question asked." Because this is the thing, they're always watching you. They're watching you way, way more than they're listening to you, right? So you trying to talk to them and to proselytize to them rarely ever works. But they're always watching. Alma has listened to me record home podcasts. She listens to me have very candid conversations on the phone with my friends. So she's absorbing all the things I would say about alcohol, about sobriety, about all that through listening and watching me, right? And then once in a while, she'll ask me a question and I answer the question. And if she has another one, I answer the question. The times I have tried to talk to her about it, it just doesn't work. She doesn't want it. So, but specifically, what I say to her is, I'm really honest. Like if she will bring me, um, we live in a drinking culture, right? She thinks drinking is only bad for me because I had a problem, because she sees most other adults around her drinking. Whereas she looks at smoking across the board as like, that's just bad and dumb, right? Even Diet Coke, she's like, that's just bad for you. So we've
Totally.
had conversations like that where it's like, okay, honey, I'm going to break this down. Alcohol is more dangerous than cigarettes for everybody. It's far more dangerous than Diet Coke for everybody, but it's just more socially acceptable. And she tries to fight me because she goes, but daddy drinks and this and this and this, but she's heard me. At that point, she's heard me, right? So the little seed is planted, and that's all I care about. I don't know what I will say when she is of age where that's a real force in her life. I hope that her just listening to me and watching me at this point, she says, I want to be like you. I don't want to drink. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that might be true, but it might not. You're your own animal with your own destiny.
Mm.
I don't know. I just hope that I know for me, I know that she feels safe to talk to me. We talk a lot. I didn't talk to my mom a whole lot because of the generation, that they just didn't do that as much.
Of course.
And I hope that's enough.
Mm. I feel like I did a couple things with Jonah that may or may not be useful in this moment that I want
Yes,
to
tell
share.
me.
So the first was that as I was writing the spoken word poem about my recovery for the first, I don't know, year or so of my sobriety, I would practice on him.
That's right. You told me that. So he knew
Yeah.
it.
So he knew, but he doesn't know what he knew. Like
Yeah.
it's a bunch of words. What does that
But
even
he
mean?
internalized that somewhere.
He has asked some questions now. And because he's a New York kid, I felt it very appropriate and, in fact, necessary to explain to him what every drug will look like
Yes.
when it shows up in front of his face on the table at somebody's house whose parents are away.
Yes.
Every single
This is what
drug,
this pill is. This is what cocaine is. This is what weed is, or whatever.
everything, everything. And even then, I had to say, and there could come a day when four different kids bring four different pills and put it into the center, chop it up with a razor blade, and then put them all together and snort them or smoke them. This is where you never, ever, ever. That is where you die.
Yeah, yeah,
People
yeah.
could die. That is where, when you see that going on, instantly come up with an excuse as to why you have to go home and leave the premises immediately
Yeah.
because shit is going to go south.
What, is Jonah 12? 13?
He's 13 now. He takes
Yeah.
subways by himself. Like, this
Yeah,
is a
you're
real
at a different, there's a big difference between an 11-year-old in the suburbs and a 13-year-old in New York.
That's right.
So you do have to have that conversation.
Yeah. I wanted him to be very familiar, savvy, comfortable even with the appearance of drugs wherever he is, so he doesn't look like that innocent fool who has no idea and then gets duped into doing it
Which is
because of
like the worst for a kid anyway. That's like they never want to look like they're that's almost worse than saying no to the thing.
correct.
So that's brilliant. Yeah. And I think that will be something like that will be we will have that conversation in a couple of years. It's just at this point it's more hypothetical.
Yeah. I have a last question, and I think I'm going to spare you from my usual questions just because we've gone fairly long, and I like to keep these things to, a relatively dishwashing session time frame.
Okay.
You have a quote on page 149 from the Gospel of Thomas that goes like this: If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say for somebody who actually doesn't know what's within them yet? My listener who's listening who actually is like, I don't know what my purpose is yet.
Mm.
How do I bring it forth if I don't know it?
It's the same thing. You don't have to know. You don't have to try. You follow the next clue. I call it following the breadcrumbs, right? First of all, if you're using alcohol, drugs, this behavior, whatever, okay, to back it up a sec, like the addiction was actually killing me. The alcohol was actually, physically going to kill me. But that not using my potential was more painful. I knew it. And what he's saying, if you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you, was true. that was like the major turning point of my sobriety. I was like 22 days sober at Kripalu, had just done a Sean Corn weekend. I have the book right in front of me right now. It's Always With Me, The Great Work of Your Life by Stephen Cope. I opened to that page and I knew from that point on, there is no more fucking around ever, because it will kill me, and it had been killing me. So what I say to that person is, you have a dharma too. Dharma just means truth. It's that blueprint in you, that unique blueprint that is you. You have it. No one is without that. It doesn't mean it's a profession or a job. A lot of people think it comes forth in their job, and sometimes it does, but it's more just becoming who you really are, becoming who you already are. And you can't get there when you are tied down by an addiction. You never will get there. So you don't have to wait until you figure out what your thing is, right? What's within you. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to mine for it. And it's more of a process of curiosity and discovery. You follow the clues. To me, and maybe this is true for you too, it's not like, to me, it's like, call that person. I'll be taking a walk. I'll get a hit of an idea. Reach out to that person to see if they want to talk. I'll be in a meditation. It'll be like, no, you're going to say no to that. That's not right. But you're going to say yes to this. That's right. I have this weird hit that keeps coming. You need to go to Paris. Like I do. Like, I need to go to Paris. I don't know why, but I'm going to go. So it's like following these breadcrumbs. And that's what's led me to this place, to this writing of the book, to this career that I have. It's not that I woke up one day and go, I want to be a best-selling author. I mean, it did, but it was like, I want to be a best-selling author, and I'm going to teach, courses for people or retreats. It was like, I want to know the truth about what's going on with me. That's what I want to know. And I'm going to write this thing right now, because that's the question I have. And then 10,000 unsexy steps later, you start to uncover it.
That's really good advice, woman.
Thank you.
It's good medicine. We don't know if I have learned anything in the last several years. Just follow the signs.
Follow the signs.
It's such truth.
And it's
There,
so
it's always
fun that
there.
way, right? It's
It
like,
is more fun. It's an
it's
adventure.
an adventure, and you can't really mess it up. It's like, you try things. That's the big thing too. It's just try things. Try things. They fail. They do great. Same. Great. You know more information now, and you do the next
Hmm.
thing. Yeah.
Hmm. What does prayer mean to you? Last question.
Hmm. Prayer for me is a very specific. I have like one prayer, and I think it's from the Course in Miracles. It's, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? So when I'm praying,
Hmm.
I'm asking. I'm asking to be led. And the last part I add on to that, which is my part, is speak to me in a way I can understand.
Hmm. Oh, that touches me.
Mm.
Yes. And it might not be words. It might just be
It's
one of
never
the
words.
breadcrumbs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's those hits that you get, or the little tiny
Paris.
voice, the little yes, or the little no, or the no
Right.
more. Yeah.
Right. I love you. I thank you for all of the great work that you are doing in the world to help so many people, including me.
I love you too. I love you too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.